evening all, welcome to Aquilo or Bust. So this is the basic design. So what we're doing here is making Project Snowflake. A bit troublesome, that word. Just Google that, you come up with a lot of different meanings for it. I don't mean it in anything horrible or hateful. I mean it as in I'm making a snowflake. You know, the little pretty little things that fall out the sky. Usually if you're Scandinavian. But yeah, so because like I thought it'd be a good name for it, but I may come to regret that when people come to the channel expecting something very different. But there we go. What we're going to do here is show you the principles of the design. Then we'll go straight into basically the product. So as you can see, we're building stanchions and arms. The designs are pretty much what I built on the edge of the ship. And then we went to go and build. So let's do a little bit of a fast forward.
6.5 hours later.
And it genuinely was 6.5 hours later. So I didn't film it because I just, what's the point? It's better to show you it because by this point, imagine you've kind of built something, first stage, design and build. Now you test it. So this is what we're doing in orbit around Nauvis at the moment is we've built it, we've started to build fuel, we're starting to think about how to maybe get this base to Aquilo. Now, remember our design criterion. One of them is to sort of deploy the base. So we've built it in its entirety around Nauvis and to test it works, because obviously that's quite important. And then we'll package it up. So pretty much that's kind of cool, actually. And we've made a few mistakes, and you'll see them as we go. So number one, you could probably see the mistake I've already made. Don't put engines above builds because they destroy what's ever below them. Didn't realize that until way too late. But you can see the basics of the design. So we have a number of arms that then have kind of stanchions upon them. Because it's Aquilo, it needs rockets. You can't just have turrets, things like, you know, sort of laser turrets and gun turrets. You have to have actual missiles. So we've really gone to town on, on putting missiles everywhere. And because quality is something, and we'll look at this maybe in a few videos' time, because this will be a bit of a two-parter, I think. But I think I've cracked quality now to the point where I pretty much can make anything I like into legendary. It's quite easy, and I'll show you that in maybe a couple of videos time. But we have the HMS Spick and Span, which is an old 50s housewife saying, which is basically about keeping things nice, clean and tidy. And basically that ship just literally rockets around the inner solar system, basically creating legendary stuff. We'll look at that another time. It's a bit of a design I got from Reddit, and I think it comes from Neelaus, so full credit to him, I think, but I will research that because I have not done that yet. So Snowflake Base is basically very powerful, so 3 fusion reactors, that's pretty much overkill. The reason we've done that is because this platform will grow. The pure design decision of this is to have a base in orbit that doesn't suffer from freezing mechanics. The idea being that we can actually make most things on this platform and then drop them down to Aquilo. So that's the plan. At the moment, though, the main focus is to get things like missiles, ammo, and really load this thing up. So while we have things like legendary grabbers, we're only going to we're going to carefully use them. Don't send the ship there with legendary stuff like at the front. Put basic stuff on and see if it makes it. So that's the design principle, is to try and, you know, package everything up, put it into the base, send it there. I have no idea if it will get there, and then see if we can deploy it. While we deploy it, are we going to have issues with the rocks, because there's large big rocks. You see the damage the engines did, so there you go. That's a learning point for me. I think I only repeat it another 5 times, so you will see me do that over and over. Right now I'm scratching my head going, doy, why is it doing that? And it took me a while to figure that out. Everything is based upon blueprint. Yes, you can have this blueprint if you're interested. It's set to certain levels of quality, but again, you could just do a quick upgrade planner to change all that to standard stuff. I think standard, oh, there you go, that's the HMS Spick and Span. I love this thing. This thing is brilliant. It is constantly churning out legendary raw materials, which is super. So the idea is it creates a big sort of spider web, a net, and that really is what I think we want with Aquilo, because yes, the supply ships bring everything to it, things like concrete. So I'm not sure how we're going to do concrete yet. I mean, not that we maybe need a lot of it, but it all comes down to what, you know, like we did with Gleba, what's the design principle we want to do with Aquilo? And for me, I really want to have an orbital platform. See, again, look, I've done it again. I am so dumb, aren't I? It's so bad. It's so dumb. It's just a wonderful example of an idiot playing this game. I do enjoy that. At this point, I think I just worked it out. But again, it does make me ask some quite fundamental questions of, did my mum put too much lead in the food they ate when I grew up? Because it does feel that way. Anyway, so third time's a charm. We'll keep building that until I get it. But what I think I'm kind of liking is the premise, and again, James Webb Telescope, all of that good stuff. It was sent up and then it deployed, it opened, and I like that thought. I think much more should be done. It's very Kerbal Space Program. In fact, if you've ever played that game, that's how I felt with this build. It was a joy to do it because it didn't feel like I was building a platform and then hurling it into space. It felt like I built something, packaged it up into a travel format, and then sent it to the planet. I think this game doesn't put enough focus on stations. Platforms, to me, could be... I mean, platforms generally mean ships in this game, but I think actually it should mean static, space stations. And I think there's definitely something to think about there, because yes, most things you can do on the planet, but you have infinite resources in space. So surely it's a good idea to maybe have more things being produced in space, like chips, for example. You could do something cool like chips, but I don't know. We'll investigate this, because Aquilo, I think, is a really good example of where there's just nothing on the planet, so don't bother trying to build anything there. You might as well just have a base like this. So I think that's, and you see the obvious mistake I just made there. Yep, I know, I saw it too. This is when you look back and you realise, was I drunk? And the answer to that usually is yes. But what I'm surprised at is how many mistakes I make. And I think it's because when I build these things, I'm going at 100 miles an hour. Like with Gleba, I was just like, right, I'm very much a to-do list person. And I just hit each point. So one point, right, okay, go fix that. Right, on to the next, right, on to the next. Because to me, I have this weird panic in my life that I'm going to probably die tomorrow, and I won't have achieved all the things that I wanted to. Does anyone else get that? I really do feel like I have to get things done quickly, because I don't know why I do it, but particularly when playing this game, I will be like, right, I'm not going to bed because I want to get this thing built. And that's pretty much what I did. Is it was about 6 hours I spent making this thing. Almost all of it was actually on Nauvis, sending things up. You see here, I'm literally hovering over my legendary pots, picking up things and dumping them in the rockets to send them up. Yes, I know I can call them, but I hate the fact that it doesn't always do it, so I do it myself. And the thought process, again, is once we get to Aquilo, I have no idea if there's enough missile coverage, if there's enough defense. When ships are static, they don't seem to attract too much rocks. But you see here, I'm having a bit of a crisis again, where I'm thinking, well, I've got fusion power. I really should be using some of these very good laser turrets that I've been building. And then I start to kind of place laser turrets. Then my kind of brain does that thing. It's like if you get a credit card and it expires. How many times do you cut that thing up? And then, I mean, again, who uses credit cards anymore? You use your phone, right? But in the old days, you used to have a credit card. And 9 times out of 10, I'd cut it into 12 bits and then throw 3 bits in the bin here, go to work and throw 4 bits in the bin there. And even then, I'd be like, oh my God, did I put the same string of 3 bits and 4 bits? They might get the number. And you see that I definitely have some sort of diagnosable issues, I suspect, that make me question let's say my kind of trust in my own brain. And I think when it comes to like this Aquilo base, I kind of over-engineered it, and I think I'm kind of recognizing that now, because you've got 8 gun turrets. Most of them would be legendary, because we have so many legendary gun turrets, it's not even funny now. And the ammo I think we produce is actually so well researched that it's pretty strong. I think actually it can destroy big rocks as well. It just takes a bit of time. The missile turrets are pretty much basic. That's because I've not really moved to legendary yet. I've only just started. And I think for this base, you don't want to go too hard on legendary. Like I think I've already used quite a lot of legendary grabbers here. So I've stuck with epic as best I can. But I mean, that's pretty good coverage, right? So it's unlikely that any rock is going to get through. But I think the key sort of thought process for me is going to be, how do we make sure that the base works to a point where it has enough resources. So one of the things we'll look at is really how do we make sure that the types of rocks we're going to get, because obviously Aquilo is going to be mostly ice, so we have to think about how to process that ice into something more usable. So there's a little production now. We'll look at that in a bit more depth in probably the next video, but this starts to make me question my design, and this is why I built it around Nauvis. I could have just gone and built it around Aquilo. It would have been a lot harder because obviously I've got to ship in everything, but to be honest, I'm making stuff in such high quantities now, it's ridiculous. But anyway, fast forward a little bit. So here we are now. We're planning now how to send this platform to Aquilo. Doesn't sound that complicated, right? But it is, because you've got to think about the big rocks. Now, you can cover this thing in as many kind of turrets as you like. If you don't have missiles destroying big rocks, you're gonna have a bad time. And I think this is where modular ships and ships equipment is highly, I would seriously recommend it, because the ability to just cut out some of the modules, like here I kind of realized our asteroid production module, I call that a module. It's a group of machines that create a working piece of the ship. Because that's blueprinted, you could just whip that out. And that's what I kind of realize now, is that, look, this thing is going to fly forward. So I have to think about how do we kind of ensure that we're going to have, like, all the right kind of defenses. So here it was really making sure that we had everything kind of in a row. And again, we don't want legendary grabbers at the front, because if just we lose one, that's a lot of loss when you think about it. So really it's about trying to sort of engineer a travel design, and I've never really encountered that in this game before, and I think it was a bit of a fresh breath of fresh air, because suddenly I'm trying to think to myself, right, this just has to go one trip. So with the engines, for example, we could dump them, so we can have the engines and the fuel and the fuel creating machines. Once we get to Aquilo, we're dumping that, and we're going to literally drop, well, all of it into back to the Aquilo to be put onto the main ship to be brought back to be used again. So think of it as recoverable boosters. That's kind of cool, right? And I think here again, I start to kind of look at this with a bit of a retrospective eye and say, is this big enough? Is there enough arms? Have we maybe got a bit too small? So you see the challenge we have. I think there's an awful lot of second guessing at this point, because we haven't clicked that button to send the ship, and I'm starting to kind of worry a bit now, thinking, well, have we done enough? Do we have enough to get this ship there? Now, an awful lot of the problem is because of my new quality machines, which again you've probably not seen. You may have seen a hint of them in this video. We're now actually trashing everything that isn't legendary, because there's no point having 400 uncommon arms or turrets or anything like that. You might as well just destroy them all and go with legendary. I know that's a bit of a kind of brash statement, but I think it is probably right, because we're getting to a point where I think I have like 200 legendary gun turrets at the moment. It's unlikely I'm going to use them all, so you might as well basically start thinking about how best to do that. But certain things, like laser turrets, we're struggling a bit with them. I think we struggled with laser turrets generally. And laser turrets, I think, are brilliant, but not really for spaceships. So, yeah, I think we've got to think a bit more carefully about that. But again, what I wanted to have was just the ability not to strain the ammo too much. Because again, in my head, I'm thinking, right, do we have enough engineering around the ammo production here? Because in theory, we've got a very small but highly beaconed ammo production. So there we go. So what are we seeing now? So what I'm doing here is trying to drain all of the ammo out of the arms, the stanchions, because pretty much we're now starting to pack the ship up. So, or the base rather. So it's a bit like that episode of DS9, Star Trek DS9, when they moved the station. It feels a bit like that. So here I'm starting to think, right, okay, let's just get rid of the asteroid production for now. We can literally drop it back in, no problem. And again, I love this simple fact of the modular design of ships, is that you could just do that. I think actually I was always a bit skeptical of ship building in this game. And I think now I'm a bit more partial to it, because I guess I've done a lot more of it. And I can totally see that shipbuilding is actually brilliant in Factorio. I really actually think it's probably one of my more favourite things to do. Didn't enjoy it, certainly as I was doing the Gleba base. The thought of building another spaceship filled me with dread. because I never really understood the point of it. Firstly, you can't make them terribly beautiful. You can't really do too much with them in terms of clever designs. And I think really, I felt it was quite a limiting thing. And I think, but the mechanics are good. So anything that you kind of trash on the ship immediately is pulled into storage. I like that. That's really good. So we don't necessarily need to drain the ammo here. It was more just of a thing to see, is it possible? But again, that's what we end up doing. We end up basically just trashing everything. And you see all the ammo is basically sucked into, in fact, everything is sucked into our storage. So now our thought process is, do we have enough storage? Now, I've been making legendary ship storages, whatever they call them, ship hangar or something like that, cargo hangar. And they're really good. But again, I don't really want to waste it on Aquilo. So this is where I'm starting to kind of look a bit with an analytical eye to say, right, do I actually have enough storage for all of this? And the answer is yes. That's one of the best things to think about this method of design is basically, look, there we go. Everything is then saved. It's dropped into the cargo, and we can then delete the arms. So this is pretty much getting the final stages ready to go to start looking at pushing this ship towards Aquilo. And the engines are very much optional at this point. Well, not optional. They're very much bolt on. So once they're done, they're done. And I think really this does show, I think, one of the kind of nicer designs. I'm quite proud of this design because to me, this is like what I had in my head was deploying arms. And, that's really one of the fun things of it. But firstly, we need to make sure that we can actually, let's say, not deploy them, undeploy them, if that's a word. And you can see there it's done quite well. It's actually done, it's produced effectively back to our central ship. This won't be kind of changed. This is pretty much our platform that we're going to send. And it's pretty well armed. So I think for now, this is kind of the last defense. I think I'm quite happy with this. So again, just need to make sure the ammo flows because we are going to have an awful lot of big rocks to manage effectively. And look how slow that is. Seriously, it's still deleting. And I think we need to make sure that the platform as it stands right now is, good to go. But this has been a really interesting kind of design, I think. I think this one definitely more than most, I think, has made me sort of understand spaceships a bit more. I think it's like the Gleba base, like I say, by doing it, you get a better appreciation of it. And I think now I'm starting to kind of see more interesting things that we can do with these ships. And here's a great example of, let's over-engineer it. We've got a load of legendary and epic engines. Let's just use them all. And again, I'm now worried, am I going to have a rock fling past the ship and blow up that? But again, I don't mind too much as if we lose a thing, we lose a thing. I'm not too worried about that. But yeah, so pretty much final arm, the final stanchion is then deconstructed, and pretty much the ship is ready to go. Now, the ship as it stands is actually quite powerful. I think this is a pretty strong ship, but the question is, will it make it to Aquilo? Awful lot of missile turrets. I think that's been something that, again, I'm glad I doubled down on. And in fact, you'll see now I actually decided to go another level down because, again, I was pretty paranoid at this point because I'd had so many things fail going to Aquilo. I was actually struggling with Aquilo pretty much all the way up to the Gleba base because the Red Dwarf, you see that ship up on the right called the Red Dwarf, that was my original kind of fly around the solar system ship that I had to then repurpose into a delivery ship for Aquilo because I didn't know Aquilo needed so much kind of tending. Yes, we're saving it. I don't care. I'm not gonna lose this one. But I did think to myself, there's an awful lot of legendary stuff there. After my previous instance of deleting a legendary box because the Spidertron shot it because a lovely pentapod hatched right next to it because I'm an idiot. Yeah, that happened and I'm not happy about it. So I'm kind of learning my lesson now a little bit and I'm just making sure that I kind of understand what I'm doing. So here we go. So now fly to the platform. I'm obviously not going to send the platform without me being on it. That feels like it's just an unspoken engineering rule. If you're playing Factorio and you're sending platforms somewhere, unless it's the Shattered Planet, I think you should be on it if it's a new, it's a new investigation. And I can only imagine like how many people disagree with that. But to be honest, you can lose the game this way. As you probably saw when I tried to go to the Shattered Planet for the first time, I got killed, and you know that's game over in theory. So obviously a bit of save scumming there, but so this is pretty much good to go. And I think the last few sort of checks are really just down to making sure we have enough fusion cells. That obviously is how we're fueling this thing. Making sure we have enough ammo. So ammo is going to be a key component of the trip, because if we don't have enough, we're in a world of hurt, because that's, again, 9 times out of 10, I've lost ships to Aquilo because literally I run out of ammo. So that's a primary focus of this. And secondary, you know, do we have everything we need? So the design here is to make things. So we've loaded things like cryogenic factories, the electromagnetic factories, whatever they're called. So we have gone to town on this. We've got an awful lot of in-game assets sat in those those cargo bays. So this is pretty much, you know, all or nothing at this point. And here we go. So we're now ready to click go. I click go, and I notice that I've completely balls up the engines. So I think, will we make it? We'll stop there. Find out next time.